guys, this is Johannes Movies, and welcome to yet another World of Warcraft role-playing guide. Now, in this video, I will be talking about the priest, what it is, how it works, and I will give you all the different ways that you can be a priest. So, in my opinion, this is like the most complex class as it varies pretty much from race to race, and priests aren't the same thing as, for example, in the Troll, the Night Elven, or the Human Society. So, without further ado, let's just get into it. In the previous How to Roleplay a Paladin guide I did, the light was pretty much the centerpiece, it was pretty much everything for that class, and many would think that it is the same for the priest and that they're all about the light, but they're just all these different branches and ways different races can be priests or are considered priests in their society, and it's not really the same thing as being a priest in one society and being a priest in the other. Blizzard tried to do something with the specs, but essentially a night elf or a troll or a human cast a light and they call upon the same powers in the game, and they have some specs but it really doesn't do much. But in the lore it is actually quite different and there are a lot of drastic changes, and that is what I'll try to give you in this video. But just as in the last one, I would suggest that you watch my light video. Even though, as I said, it isn't like the main thing, it is still a huge part of being a priest because there is a lot of light priests, so if you understand what the light is in detail, you should probably understand this guide better. So, what is a priest? It is definitely a lot more than you might think. A lot of people have this idea that the priest is this super moral character that would never ever do anything wrong, but as I said, the priests are very complex, so I'll try to simplify it for you as much as I can. Now, the two big things with the priests are the light and the shadow, and they're very poorly explained currently, but just try to see it as the opposites. Like a good analogy of this would be if you have your hand and it's towards the light, there's like the light shining on your hand, on your palm, and everything is like all bright and shiny, while below that everything is like dark and there is a shadow, so that is like the yin and the yang, those are like the opposites. And it is considered that the light and the shadow are like the main energies in the entire universe, not just the world on Azeroth, because we have the Draenei who practice the light and the Naru who are most likely on other worlds as well, so it is a thing that is through the entire universe, even though we don't really know how big the Warcraft universe is. Now, the best way to explain it is that there has to be a balance between the light and the shadow, and that is pretty much what the priests do. And they're very much like the druids who like keep the balance of the nature. That's why you have the priests who kinda keep the balance of the world, if you could say it like that. So just as the priests can heal, they can also damage, and it is also said that the shadow priests at times could even rival or even be stronger than the users of fell magic such as the warlocks and the users of the arcane magic such as the mages. Now, I can't really explain this universally as a lot of races are very specific, so that is why I'll try to cover as many important races as possible, because with other classes there is a few differences, but here it's just like super drastic changes, so let's just get into the races. The first would obviously be the humans, because even though they're not really that important when it comes to the light and the entire universe scheme, they're kinda the signature priest race and they have been since Warcraft 1, and they have been practicing the powers of the light, and the humans are kinda connected to this Church of the Light, which is very unique compared to the other races. Now, I explained in my light lore video on how the entire light thing works, but I'll try to explain it here briefly if you don't really care to watch like a 6-7 minute video. So pretty much the light follows a user who believes it, and he doesn't really have to be right in what he is doing, but as long as he fully believes in himself and if he believes that what he is doing is right, even though it might not be right in someone else's eyes, the light will follow him. So that is pretty much what the light is in a general sense, and that is something that all the followers of the light go by, and they couldn't really get their powers otherwise. But the humans are a bit unique to the other light practicing races because of their church system, which is actually quite similar to the world religion that we have in the real world. And at the start of Warcraft, the humans believed in like this sort of a god instead of the entire thing revolving around an energy that is all around the universe. But it is said that the entire god thing is kinda been retconned. Now, as you might have guessed, the priests are a big thing in the human society, and they are there to educate the people about the light and show them the ways of the light, and they also actually take action as priests, and you can see them on the battlefield healing the wounded or even actually doing damage. Now, a lot of people ask me this question, and in my Paladin RP guide I explain the difference between a human priest and a human paladin, or just a priest and a paladin. And pretty much a paladin is a mix between a warrior and a priest, while a priest is someone who is just more of a caster and doesn't really prefer like the close quarters combat. Now of course this does not mean that the priests are super weak compared to the paladins, it just means that they have different ways of utilizing the light, and sometimes paladins can be very useful, which is why they formed the order, because they needed someone who can fight directly on the front, but sometimes priests can also be very useful, much more useful than the paladin. Next to the humans, you have the three races that aren't really that important in the whole priest scene, if you can actually call it that. And you have the dwarves, the gnomes, and the blood elves. And the gnomes are the least important, along with the goblins. And the priests are very rare among their lines, because they aren't really like this race that is very strong when it comes to religion. But they do utilize the light through devices they can use for healing or even doing damage. Now, as I mentioned, you also have the goblins, who are very similar to the gnomes, and there really isn't anything special when it comes to them, because they're not like these huge believers and they like to like negotiate, just like you have the gnome shamans. I mean, they're not like these earth creatures that believe in the earth mother and the power of the earth. They just kinda use the power just as they use the light for their own cause. Now the dwarves, on the other hand, they do belong to the Church of the Light in Stormwind, and they were taught by the humans, and it is actually said that the gnomes most likely got it from the dwarves, because the humans taught the dwarves and the gnomes were also there, so they kinda got a bit from that. And the dwarves, compared to like the gnomes or the goblins, they're a bit more serious, but there really isn't anything crazy about them, and they're not really these light fanatics that see the light as a big part of their society, and they're currently focusing a lot more on their titanic origin and the fact that they're the earthen and that they're there to protect the world, so the light is kinda there, but it isn't really like the integral part of their society. And next to them you have the blood elves, who were also taught the ways of the light by the humans, and they also aren't really major believers, because at the start they were very much like the humans before the entire destruction of Quel'Thalas. But even then, a lot of them saw the light as a magic they could abuse, just like they were abusing arcane or other types of magic. Now later down the line, the light has forsaken them, or they have forsaken the light, after the entire population was almost destroyed. And they found a way to use the light again by ciphering the powers of the captured Naru that was delivered by Keltas. But currently, since the Burning Crusade, they're kinda going back to their old ways, or you can even say those are the new ways, because they're starting to see the light for what it really is, and they're starting to see the light like the humans or the Draenei. Although the opinions are still quite split, and there's still battles that abuse the light, while there's also believers. And that is mainly on the races that aren't really these huge believers. But next to the humans, you have the Draenei, who, as I said in my Paladin RP guide video, they are the most accurate when it comes to the ways of the light, because they understand it a lot better than the humans, and they have been practicing the light for thousands and thousands of years, and they were taught it directly by the Naru while they were traveling throughout the universe trying to search for a home. And the Naru are considered to be the creatures of pure light. Some people even consider them to be light gods, and they were taught directly by them, so they have a lot better view of the light, even though even we don't really know what the light is. Like, we're getting some hints now in Worlds of Draenor, but we don't really know too much about the light, and what we do know I explained in my light lore video. So, I would say the priests are a big thing, just like the paladin within the Draenei society, because the light is a big part of their society. And that is mainly with the traditional light priests. Now, I'm going to go through the different races that I said have drastic changes, starting with the Night Elves. Now, the Night Elves are a completely different story, and they believe in a Loon, which is a bit of a confusing topic. I also made a video on her if you want to learn more about her and about all the speculations that are going about her. But pretty much she's the mother of Cenarius and the moon goddess that the Night Elves worship. She's like their main god. And it is not really certain what she really is. There's so many speculations about her. A lot of people think she might even be a Loa, or that she might be a Naru. But one thing is certain, and that is that she actually exists, because her believers can actually draw upon her powers, and we have actually seen that in the past. In the lore, she is considered to be both the light and the shadow, meaning that she can heal, but she can also deal damage against her enemies. And you can see in the game that the Night Elven priests practice the light, but they don't really consider the light to be anything. Like, they don't really see the light as like this big energy, and they even refuse to believe in it, even when Valen showed them some of the proof that we have. And the Night Elven society is a matriarchal society, so the females are usually priestesses and warriors, while you have the males who are mainly druids. Although recently that started to change, so you can see like male priests and female druids. But not all Night Elf priests believe in Elune and see her as their main god, and there are many different branches, and many of the other Night Elves see other ancients such as Goldrin, and some even see the evil satyrs as their gods, which can be a possibility for you to roleplay something different or try to roleplay like an evil character. Now, also another race that could fit in this group could be the Worgen, although not fully. I mean, they're not really worshipping Elune, but they were taught by the Night Elves the ways of the priest, which is why they can only be priests and not paladins. Gilneas itself was split apart from other factions, and they were never really this super religious faction, even though they actually had like light churches in Gilneas. They had pagans, and they also had harvest witches, which practiced basic druidism, so they weren't really like a light society like the rest of the humans are. And now the Gilneans are infected by a curse which is highly related to the Night Elves, and a lot of them reside in Darnassus, which suggests that they might be taught by the Night Elven priests, while they might have also had some priests who had new traditional ways of the light. So it doesn't mean that all of the Worgen priests are taught by the Night Elves, and they're probably like priests of the light that we had before, like Gilnean priests, human priests, but it is highly speculated that a lot of the Worgen priests currently are quite related to the Night Elves. Now, another race similar to the Night Elves could be the Taurens, who only really recently got the playable priests. And the main reason for them is because the Tauren kinda learn more about their past, because they practiced druidism and they had all this stuff in the past, but they didn't really check their history and they forgot about a lot of the stuff. But now they're learning more about their true like tradition and history, so they're trying to worship both eyes of the Earth Mother, pretty much the moon and the sun. And the Tauren, just like the Night Elves, see Elune as something, and they see her as the moon, which is one eye of the Earth Mother, while the Night Elves worship it fully. And you have the Taurens that now worship the sun as well. So the Tauren paladins and the priests are mainly just sun druids, and they're quite similar to the regular druids, and there really isn't anything crazy to them. So lore-wise, you don't really cast the powers of the light like the humans would do or the Draenei, and you're kinda quite similar to the Night Elven priest. Now, a race that is completely different from all these races are the Trolls, and the Trolls have just nothing to do with the light, and they're kinda the biggest class misrepresentation in the game, because you can cast light spells in the game as a troll, and usually the priests that you actually play in the game lore-wise would be like witch doctors, hexers, or Loa priests. And how they get their powers is from the Loa, which are these ancient spirits that the troll worship, and it is like a huge thing in their society. Like, their society is just based on the Loas. And depending on the law they worship, their powers vary, so there are certain dark laws that require cannibalism or sacrifice in order to give their casters their powers, while there are also not so evil laws that only require certain rituals and worships in order to grant the caster their powers. So you pretty much have your hands free to just search the currently known laws that the trolls worship and just adjust your role-playing style accordingly, and also your spells, because spells from different lores are not the same. It really depends on which lore you worship, the spells that you cast, and the trolls definitely do not cast the powers of the light just like the humans or the Draenei. And the last race I'm going to cover, like this video is already taking so long, and those are the Forsaken. Now this is something a lot of people always ask me in the Q&As, and I have answered it a couple of times, and that is how do the undead priests work. Now most of the current Forsaken were once mainly humans, and they practiced the ways of the light, and there were many actual priests that died and turned into the Forsaken, but ever since they died, the light has abandoned them, so almost all of the Forsaken priests are shadow priests now, and they're a part of a cult called the Cult of the Forgotten Shadow. And the entire Cult of the Shadow thing started after the First War, when a human priest started studying the Orc Shadowcasters in order to counter them and their forces, but soon enough she got so obsessed with that she started preaching about the balance of the light and the shadow, and she got a bit more of a deeper understanding of the light, and with those studies the Forsaken managed to practice their old ways of the light, even in their undead, so they aren't necessarily evil, although they can kinda turn evil with that path. Now another thing to note is that the Forsaken can also be holy priests and they can practice the light, but it is very rare as it actually hurts them, and even if someone like a human priest healed like a Forsaken, they would still feel the pain, so it is definitely not something they can comfortably do, which is why most of them resorted to the shadow ways of the priest. And that is all here for this role-playing guide. Thanks a lot for watching, and do leave your suggestions on what you would like to see. I already covered all of the races on how to roleplay them, and now I covered a big part of the classes as well, but I will finish them eventually, so feel free to leave your comments on what you would like to see next. Also do leave your feedback on what you would like to see on the channel in general, and don't forget to like this video if it helped you out, and also subscribe as it really helps out the channel and keeps all these videos going. And thanks a lot for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and see you next time.